Welcome back to the last episode of the Batman Chronicles. Speaking of which, I'm getting my last transmission today.
Time for your reckoning, Tedesco.
Oh my god! Josh! What do they do to you at Channel Awesome? In case you didn't know, that's the horror guru, who I guess is Bane-ish?
I see you've adapted to the darkness, but I was born in the darkness, molded by it. I even dated it. This led to some debatably unethical life choices with the darkness. In the state of California, you see, being born into something you elicit a relationship with can be a bit of a problem. As a result, I ended up in court to discuss my relations with the darkness, so I didn't end up on the darkness offenders list.
Okay, listen up. The less I know about the darkness, the better. What do you want me to review?
It's The Dark Knight Returns. Both parts.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Frank Miller is one of those illustrators whose reputation precedes him. On one hand, he managed to take comics published through DC and Marvel and give them a stylized and mature edge that contradicted mainstream expectations at the time. On the other hand, he's become victim to the style he created, leading to most of his work to become cliched and over the top. Either way you look at him, there's no denying he's made an impact. He's illustrated great action and over-the-top gore in a stylized and visually satisfying way while managing to incorporate interesting themes that haven't been handled in this way. I can easily make a reasonable argument that his style influenced not just people in comics industry, but people in animation as well. Rewatching Batman the Animated Series, it made me appreciate the simple design for characters and settings that could make way for fun, active, and high-intensity visual style. But like I said, it's all about balance. I want to say it was around the time Sin City was adapted to film did he start to abuse the tropes and style that made his stories memorable. The biggest stab was seeing him adapt the Spirit. Here you got an iconic pulp character from a comic handled by the guy who created the term graphic novel and directed a self-indulgent dumpster fire that disregarded the look and feel of what made the character great. Miller, what the hell? A few years back you had conversations with Eisner before his unfortunate passing, and this is what you do to honor him? Sam Jackson throwing a kitchen sink and completely drab version of a colorful comic book character? Damn it, Miller, you were supposed to be Eisner's protege. How the hell can you justify this crap? Wait, I'm not talking about the Spirit, aren't I? I'm supposed to be talking about The Dark Knight Returns. Oh, sorry guys. Before Miller went over the edge with Sin City, he published an Elseworld story for Batman that showed him coping through a world that's darker, more violent, and chaotic. Much like a cowboy acting out of retirement to finish one last job, Batman is back on the street. But his age, outlook of the world has changed. Now he's more morally ambiguous than he was before, acting more violent in result of villains like the mutants. This Batman is cruel, unforgiving, and a risk taker. Part of what made this adaptation of Batman work was Miller's own personal feelings going into it. I read how experiences coming to New York to work in comics was a culture shock from what he's seen in the quiet Midwest. Exposed to more crime, he wondered what it would look like for Batman to enter a world that would challenge him, much like it challenged Miller. This is appropriate, especially for the Bronze Age. This was where more risks were taken for superheroes. Hulk suffered from dissociative identity disorder. Tony Stark had alcoholism, and as we talked about last week, the twisted sense of the Joker, trying to show people that any normal person can go insane. Therefore, seeing a story where Batman becomes a reflection of the world we live in was praised as a milestone in comics. Therefore, DC Animation managed to give the comic its due with its own animated movie. But unlike The Killing Joke, which needed to stretch its story to try and fit a feature-length runtime, The Dark Knight Returns was split into 2 parts. However, this isn't a situation where one was perceived as a sequel. Both these movies flow naturally with one another despite adding up to about 2.5 hours. The animation may have been the same for other Batman animated movies, but because Frank Miller's style is so iconic, they had to translate that bulky size of his characters, along with the over-the-top gore and heavy contrast in light and color. Because Miller's style was already cartoony to begin with, it actually looks great despite moving at about 12 frames per second. Look at this guy. Don't you see this type of character working in a cartoon over a live-action movie? Speaking of live-action, guess who they get to play Bruce Wayne? Peter freaking Weller, aka RoboCop. Tell you why this works, we gotta talk about RoboCop. In a not too distant future, Detroit is rampant with violence and crime. A policeman is transformed into a brutal, high-tech law enforcer who takes down his foes in creative ways while suffering from the trauma of his past and coping with the oversaturation of the media. So what is The Dark Knight Returns? In a not too distant future, Gotham is rampant with violence and crime, A vigilante is transformed into a brutal high-tech law enforcer who takes down his foes in creative ways while suffering from the trauma of his past while coping with the oversaturation of the media. So, see a few things that share commonalities, right? Having Peter Weller play this version of Batman was a win from the beginning, but this isn't a lazy performance. Weller does so well having Miller's lines read through his voice with the right conviction and passion that I'm going to go as far as to say that this is one of my favorite versions of Batman in film. But with any great hero, you gotta have good supporting cast and villain. With the film, we got Commissioner Gordon. He's Batman's confidant, along with Carrie Kelly. They help Batman, but also remind him of his humanity that he can sometimes easily dip out of during the film. The mutants, which let's be honest, are a remnant of the 80s, are pretty much what gives the story its relatability. Because they're just kids who cling on to the most popular things at the time, be it a radical monster or Batman as shown later on, it's the basics of why people get involved in gangs. Having a sense of trying to be into something bigger than they are and feeling accepted despite doing radical things. The funny thing about this, in hindsight, is that this is what worked about movies like Fight Club. Mutants are like the kids who represent the kids who cling on to Tyler Durden. We also got the Joker, because let's be honest, 90% of great Batman movies got him. It's a known statistic, get used to it. The Joker was always viewed as a response to Batman. While Batman takes crime fighting to its heights, the Joker does the same with crime, doing. They can't function without each other, which is illustrated with showing the Joker coming out of a comatose state right when Batman decides to come out of retirement. He's not too central to the plot, but his involvement feels right, showing how similar he is to Batman despite having different intentions. I also like the voice work, and maybe it was my connection to RoboCop, but I found it eerily similar, hearing the Joker sound like Boddicker. They're different actors, but the voice and characters feel the same. Just listen to yourself.
That's alright. I want people to get me.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just not making myself clear.
I didn't even get the chance to talk about the use of television in the movie and how it complements the use in the comics. If anybody's read the comic, you know good chunks of it serves as a clever framing device on what's going on. In the movie, it's not ignored. Television shapes how people form their opinions, not just the villains but Batman as well. But most importantly, the big thing this film does is show one of the best fights between Batman and Superman. This fight was so important for fans that it was utilized in last year's Batman v Superman. And it sucked.
Why did you say that, Dad?
In this movie and comic, Batman had years of frustration seeing Superman used as a president's whipping boy that he felt is not helping anybody. Whereas Superman's doing it because it's what he does, being used to conform to humanity's standards, part of which makes him feel accepted as a human being, something he struggles with all the time in the comics. Whereas in Batman v Superman, Zack Snyder just really liked the comic and wanted to remake it along with the death of Superman and lazily constructing a DC cinematic universe. I'd go more into it, but I'm reviewing this movie instead. Overall, The Dark Knight Returns does what a film adaptation is supposed to do. Tell a story that pays respect to its source material while expanding on its themes and doing its own thing. It's one of my favorite Batman movies of all time. Strike that. 2 of my favorite Batman movies, but I think you see the point. So comment below and let me know what you think. What is your favorite Frank Miller comic or cartoon or anything Frank Miller based? Comment below and let me know what you think. I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P and great. Guess my warrant for this cave went up. I gotta make out like Dodge, so I'll catch you sometime.